The chessboard is not just a game, it's a battlefield, a classroom, and at times a mirror reflecting the complexities of life itself. One piece stands apart among the 32 pieces on the board, the king. It is not the most powerful piece, it doesn't move far, and it doesn't command sweeping arcs, and yet the king is the heart of the game. Without it, victory or defeat has no meaning. Hello guys, and welcome back to our channel. If you enjoy playing chess and would like to get better, consider subscribing to our channel and feel free to comment down any chess tips you may have. I also want to thank you for the support I've been getting on our channel. A tale of leadership, strategy, and survival that has captivated players for centuries, but more than that, it is a story about us, the delicate balance between strength and vulnerability, action and protection, and our choices to secure what matters most. To understand the king's importance, we must journey back to the origins of chess itself. Around the 6th century in ancient India, there was a game called Sihanga. This was the precursor to modern chess, played on an 8x8 board with pieces representing the 4 divisions of the Indian military: infantry, cavalry, chariots, and elephants. At the heart of it all was the Raja, the king. In a chaturanga, the survival of the Raja was everything. Lose your Raja and the game is over. This concept symbolized the structure of war itself, where the safety of the leader dictated the outcome of the battle. The Raja was a reflection of real-life rulers, figures who often held immense symbolic power but relied on their armies to survive. From India, chess spread to Persia, becoming the Raja became the Shah, the Persian term for king. The idea of checkmate, derived from the Persian phrase shot, meaning the king is helpless, emerged during this era. The Shah was still central to the game, representing the ruler who must be protected at all costs. When chess reached Europe in the medieval period, the king became a reflection of feudal monarchs. Unlike the powerful queens of modern chess, medieval kings were deliberate, cautious, and often slow to act. Much like their real-world counterparts, the king's limited movement mirrored the careful, strategic actions of monarchs who ruled through alliances and advisors rather than direct combat. The king is a paradox. The king is a paradox. It is both the weakest piece on the board and the most important. Unlike the queen, which can move across the board with unmatched power, or the rook, which controls entire files and ranks, the king is limited to moving one square at a time, and yet it is the only piece that cannot be sacrificed. Its survival determines the outcome of the game. This unique role makes the king a fascinating symbol. It teaches us that leadership is not about brute strength or sweeping movements. Leadership is about survival. It's about making decisions that protect not just yourself but the entire system around you. In life, we often think of leaders as dominant figures, commanding, forceful, larger than life, but the king reminds us that leadership is also about patience, restraint, and careful positioning. A well-protected king allows the rest of the team to thrive. A vulnerable king puts everyone at risk. The king's journey. Lessons from the chessboard. The king's role evolves throughout the game, teaching us different lessons at each stage. The opening, finding safety at the beginning of the game. The king is at its most vulnerable. It is surrounded by pawns, knights, and bishops, but it is also exposed to immediate threats. The king's primary goal in the opening is safety. This is why players often castle early, a move that places the king behind a wall of pawns and activates them. Rook castling is a strategic retreat. It reflects the idea that even leaders need to step back and protect themselves before they can contribute to the larger plan in life. This might mean taking time to build a strong foundation, whether it's financial stability, mental health, or a supportive network before tackling bigger challenges. The middle game, silent influence. During the middle game, the king stays in the background. It doesn't take center stage, allowing the queen, rooks, and knights to dominate the board, but its position is still critical. A poorly placed king can create weaknesses that the opponent can exploit, while a protected king provides stability. The king in the middle game is a lesson in quiet leadership. It shows us that influence doesn't always come from Bold action, sometimes simply being in the right position, is enough to shape the course of events. The end game. The King's March. In the end game, the king comes alive. With fewer pieces on the board, its vulnerability decreases and its importance as an active participant increases. The king steps forward, supporting pawns as they march toward promotion. It controls key squares and even delivers checkmates alongside other pieces. The king's transformation in the endgame is a powerful metaphor for leadership. It shows us that there are moments when leaders must step forward, take risks, and guide their team to victory. It's a reminder that leadership is not static, it evolves with the situation. The king as a symbol of life. The chess king is more than a piece, it's a symbol. It represents the balance between power and vulnerability, action and restraint. Its journey across the board mirrors the challenges we face in our own lives. The king's reliance on other pieces teaches us about trust and teamwork. Alone king is defenseless, it depends on pawns, knights and rooks to protect it and create opportunities in life too. No one achieves success alone, whether it's family, friends or colleagues. We all rely on others to help us reach our goals. The king's limited movement is another powerful metaphor. It reminds us that even the most powerful figures have boundaries. Leaders are not invincible, they have weaknesses and they depend on their team to compensate for those weaknesses. But the king's role is not to dominate, it's to endure. Its survival keeps the game alive. Iconic moments featuring the king throughout history. The king has been at the center of some of the greatest chess games ever played. In Adolf Anderson's immortal game, the king became a key figure in a brilliant series of sacrifices that led to a stunning checkmate. In Jose Raul Capablanca's legendary end games, the king marched alongside pawns, leading them to promotion and securing victory with precision. These moments remind us that the king, though limited in movement, holds immense power. When used wisely, they show us that even the smallest actions can have the greatest impact. The king in popular music culture. The king has become a symbol in art, literature, and media. In stories, the king often represents leadership, responsibility, and the struggle to maintain power. In life, we all have our own kings to protect our goals, our values, and the people who matter most to us, like the chess king. These are the things we must guard with care. Conclusion. The heart of the game. The chess king is a paradoxical figure, limited yet essential, vulnerable yet powerful. It teaches us that true strength lies in survival strategy and the ability to inspire others to act. The king is more than a piece, it is the heart of chess, a symbol of leadership and the delicate balance of power. The king reminds us that even the smallest moves can have the greatest impact. In chess as in life, the king is a symbol of endurance, wisdom, and the balance between vulnerability and power. The game begins and ends with the king protected. Lead with purpose and remember, sometimes the game isn't about winning, it's about how you play the role of the king in life's greatest battles. The chess king represents the heart of the game, but it also mirrors the heart of real life leadership. In every great battle, whether on the chessboard or in life, the king reminds us of the stakes in chess. The goal is not just to win, but to protect what matters most. The king symbolizes that irreplaceable aspect of life that cannot be sacrificed. It might be your family, your principles, or even your sense of purpose. Without these, the game, metaphorically speaking, ends. The king doesn't win the game alone. Its role is to endure, to survive long enough for its allies to bring the battle to a close. This endurance is a lesson for all of us. We may not always have to be the strongest or the fastest, but we must always be resilient. In history, great leaders have reflected the king's paradoxical nature. They are both the figurehead and the protected. Think of figures like Mahatma Gandhi or Nelson Mandela. They were not warriors in the conventional sense, but their survival and symbolic presence inspired millions. Like the chess king, their influence was not in their physical power, but in their ability to hold everything together, even in the most challenging times. The king and the power of sacrifice. In chess, sacrifices are inevitable pieces are given up to gain positional advantages, to create openings, or to protect the king. These AC vices are not losses, they are investments. Each pawn, bishop, or rook that is sacrificed serves a greater purpose. The survival and ultimate victory of the king. Life too is filled with sacrifices. Parents sacrifice their time and energy to provide for their children. Leaders sacrifice personal gain to ensure the well-being of their teams. Athletes sacrifice comfort to train for greatness. The chessboard teaches us that sacrifice is not about loss, it is about creating opportunities. The king, however, cannot be sacrificed. It is the one piece that must remain on the board. This teaches us an important lesson. While sacrifices are necessary, certain things in life must be protected at all costs. These are our core values, our integrity, and the people who matter most. Just as the king anchors the game, these aspects anchor our lives. The king's evolution through history. The king's journey on the chessboard is deeply intertwined with its historical context. In ancient times, the king represented absolute power. The survival of the ruler determined the fate of the kingdom, much like in chaturanga and chatran. However, as chess evolved and spread to Europe, the role of the king began to reflect changing ideas about leadership and governance. During the Enlightenment, when chess gained popularity in Western Europe, the king became a symbol of constitutional monarchies. Leaders were still central, but their power was tempered by the structures around them. Just as the king relies on his allies for protection, the slow, deliberate movement of the king began to reflect the cautious, measured actions of real-world rulers who understood the weight of their responsibilities. In modern times, the king continues to symbolize leadership, but it has also taken on a broader meaning. It represents the central goals in our lives that we prioritize and protect. For some, the king might symbolize their family. For others, it might represent their career, their health, or their dreams. Whatever the king represents, its survival is paramount. The king and the philosophy of endurance. The king's primary role is not to dominate, but to endure. This endurance is what makes the king unique. Unlike the queen or the rooks, who often take the spotlight with their powerful moves, the king is a constant presence in the background, quietly shaping the game. This philosophy of endurance is a powerful lesson for life in a world that often glorifies speed and achievement. The king reminds us of the value of patience. Success is not always about how quickly we move or how many battles we win. Sometimes it's about surviving the storm, staying steady, and waiting for the right moment to act. The king's endurance is also a reminder that life is not sprinted as a marathon. There will be moments when progress feels slow and when setbacks seem overwhelming, but like the king, we must keep moving forward, one step at a time. Every move matters, even the smallest ones. Throughout history, the king has played pivotal roles in some of the most legendary chess games. These moments highlight the king's unique ability to influence the game even when it appears to be a passive piece. The immortal game. In 1851, Adolf Anderson played what would later be called the immortal game against Lionel Kitke. In this match, Anderson sacrificed multiple powerful pieces, including both rooks and his queen, to set up a brilliant checkmate. The king's survival was central to this strategy, showcasing how even the boldest sacrifices revolve around protecting the king. Capablanca's endgame. Mastery. Jose Raul Capablanca, known as the Mozart of chess, was famous for his endgame strategies. In many of his matches, the king became an active participant, marching forward to support pawns and control key squares. Capablanca's ability to transform the king from a defensive figure to an offensive powerhouse was a testament to his strategic brilliance. Bobby Fischer's king maneuvers. Bobby Fischer, one of the greatest chess players of all time, often used the king in innovative ways. In his 1972 World Championship match against Boris Spassky, Fischer's precise endgame play demonstrated how the king could dictate the flow of the game, turning what seemed like a disadvantage into a decisive victory. The king in the art of leadership. Leadership is often misunderstood as a position of power or authority, but the king teaches us that true leadership is about balance. It is about knowing when to act, when to retreat, when to rely on others, and when to take charge. The king's Reliance on his allies is a reminder that no leader succeeds alone. A strong team is essential for navigating challenges and achieving goals. At the same time, the king's presence on the board creates a sense of purpose for every other piece. It inspires them to act, to sacrifice, and to fight for victory in life. The best leaders are not those who dominate, but those who empower others. They create environments where their team can thrive and where every individual feels valued and supported. The king is a symbol of this kind of leadership, a figure that anchors the board and inspires its allies. The king's place in popular culture. The king's influence extends beyond the chessboard. In literature, film, and art, the king often represents power, responsibility, and the struggles of leadership. In Shakespeare's King Lear, the aging monarch grapples with the burden of leadership and the fragility of power. The story mirrors the chess king's paradoxical role, a figure of immense importance yet deeply vulnerable. In modern media, the king often symbolizes the central goal or conflict in the movie The Queen's Gambit. The king becomes a metaphor for the stakes of the game, representing the ultimate objective that must be protected. The king is more than a chess piece. It is a symbol of endurance, strategy, and the delicate balance of power. Its journey across the board teaches us about leadership, trust, sacrifice, and resilience. As we reflect on the lessons of the king, we are reminded that life, like chess, is a game of choices. Every move matters, every decision shapes the outcome, and at the heart of it all, there is something we must protect: our own king. The game begins and ends with the king. It is not about how far it moves, but how wisely it is played. In chess, as in life, the king reminds us that true strength lies not in domination, but in survival. Protect your king, lead with purpose, and remember, sometimes it's not about winning, it's about how you play the game. The king and the balance of power. The chess king is a reminder that power is often not what it seems. The king's movement is restricted just one square at a time, and yet its importance surpasses that of every other piece. This juxtaposition challenges our understanding of power. It teaches us that power is not about brute force or speed, it's about influence and presence on the chessboard. The king's mere existence shapes the actions of every piece around it. Pawns march forward, bishops guard diagonals, and knights jump across the board, all in service of the king. This dynamic reflects how leadership functions in life. Great leaders may not make the most moves or claim the spotlight, but their presence and decisions create the framework within which others operate. In life, the balance of power is not always about who has the loudest voice or the most impressive resume. True power lies in understanding your role, leveraging the strengths of those around you, and making decisions that benefit the whole. The king's vulnerability also teaches us about the importance of humility. A king that oversteps its bounds, straying too far from safety, invites disaster. Similarly, leaders who fail to acknowledge their limits or rely too heavily on their perceived power often find themselves isolated. The king teaches us that strength is not about pretending to be invincible, it's about embracing your vulnerabilities and working within them. The emotional weight of the king. The chess king carries emotional weight for players. Its safety or lack thereof can create intense pressure. The threat of checkmate looms, constantly forcing players to remain vigilant. This mirrors the emotional weight of leadership. In real life, leaders often carry the burden of responsibility, knowing that their actions or inactions can have far-reaching consequences. The king's role highlights the importance of emotional intelligence in leadership. In chess, maintaining calm under pressure is essential to protecting the king. Similarly, in life, leaders must remain composed even when faced with uncertainty or adversity. The king teaches us that emotional resilience is a critical part of leadership. This emotional weight is also felt by the allies of the king. Every pawn, knight, and bishop acts in service of the king, knowing that its survival is their collective mission. This dynamic underscores the interconnectedness of leadership. When a king falters, the entire team feels the impact, but when the king is steady, it inspires confidence and unity among its allies. The king in time. The chess king, with its slow movement, reminds us of the inexorable march of time. It cannot rush across the border like the queen, nor can it leap like the knight. Its progress is measured, deliberate, and unchanging. This limitation is a metaphor for The human experience. We are all bound by time, unable to move backward or skip ahead. The king teaches us to embrace this reality, to move forward one step at a time. Each move matters, each moment is an opportunity to shape the future. In the end game, the king's movement becomes more significant with fewer pieces on the board. Every step carries weight. This reflects how time often feels more precious as we grow older. The king reminds us that even when the board seems sparse, even when resources are limited, there is still power in forward motion. The king as a teacher. The chess king is not just a piece, it is a teacher. Its journey across the board is filled with lessons that apply to every aspect of life. Patience and timing. The king cannot act rashly, it must wait for the right moment to move. This teaches us the importance of patience in a world that often rewards quick decisions. The king reminds us that timing is everything. Adaptability. The king's role evolves throughout the game. In the opening, it stays protected. In the middle game, it positions itself strategically. In the end game, it becomes active. This adaptability is a powerful lesson for life. Circumstances change and we must change with them. The value of small steps. The king moves one square at a time. These small steps may seem insignificant, but they add up to victory. This teaches us that progress, no matter how slow, is still progress. Every small action brings us closer to our goals. The importance of protection. The king relies on his allies for protection. This reminds us that we are strongest when we surround ourselves with supportive people. Trust, collaboration, and teamwork are essential for success. Courage and vulnerability. The king is vulnerable, but he does not shy away from his role. This teaches us that vulnerability is not a weakness, it is a part of being human. True courage lies in acknowledging your limitations and acting despite them. The king's role in the greatest chess strat, i.e. some of the most iconic chess strategies revolve around the king. Its position often determines the course of the game, even when it appears passive. King safety. In the opening, the king's safety is paramount. In the opening, players often prioritize castling to protect the king and bring the rook into play. This simple move reflects the idea of securing your foundation before advancing. Just as a king must find safety, we must build stability in our own lives, whether it's through financial security, strong relationships, or a clear sense of purpose. Opposition. In the end game, the concept of opposition often revolves around the king. Opposition occurs when two kings face each other with only one square in between. This positioning allows one king to control the movement of the other, creating opportunities for pawns to advance. The opposition is a lesson in subtlety. It shows us that even the smallest movements can have a profound impact in life. It's not always the grand gestures that matter most, it's the quiet, deliberate actions that shape the outcome. The king and pawn. Endgame. The king's role in the endgame becomes especially clear when pawns are involved. The king works in harmony with pawns, clearing their path and guiding them toward promotion. This partnership is a reminder of the power of collaboration. Just as the king and pawns work together, we achieve our greatest successes when we combine our efforts with those around us. The king as a universal symbol. The chess king is more than a piece on the board, it is a universal symbol. It represents leadership, endurance, and the delicate balance of power. Its lessons transcend chess, offering insights into how we navigate our own lives in many ways. The king is a reflection of the human condition. It is vulnerable yet powerful, cautious yet capable of bold action. Its journey across the board mirrors our journey through life, a journey filled with challenges, sacrifices, and moments of triumph. The king teaches us that leadership is not about perfection, it's about resilience. It's about making the best moves you can even when the odds are against you, and most importantly, it's about protecting what matters most. The chessboard fades into view one last time. The king stands at the center, surrounded by its allies, ready for whatever comes next. The game begins and ends with the king. Just as our own lives revolve around the things we hold dear, protect your king, move with purpose, and remember, every step matters, no matter how small. This extended narrative has explored the king's role in chess, its symbolism and lessons for life, reaching an enriched and expansive understanding of this iconic piece for the chess king, a reflection of life's greatest truths. The chessboard is a microcosm of life. Every piece represents a different role, a different challenge, and a different opportunity, but at the center of it all, the king quietly stands, a piece that is both vulnerable and essential. The Kings. Story is more than a tale of strategy, it's a reflection of our journeys, of the way we navigate life's complexities with courage, wisdom, and resilience. The king teaches us that leadership is not about moving the furthest or the fastest, it's about making deliberate, thoughtful decisions. It shows us that true strength lies in vulnerability, in trusting others, and in knowing that every move, no matter how small, can change the course of the game. The king reminds us that endurance is the key to survival. Not just in chess, but in life. As we move through the chapters of our own lives, we all face moments where we feel like the king, slow-moving, vulnerable, and surrounded by forces beyond our control. But the king reminds us that even in those moments we hold immense power. Every step forward is a step closer to victory. Every challenge is an opportunity to grow stronger, and every move is a chance to protect what matters most. The beauty of chess lies in its simplicity, yet within that simplicity is infinite complexity. The same is true of life. The chess king, with its quiet strength and enduring presence, serves as a timeless symbol of resilience, leadership, and the power of small, deliberate actions. It shows us that even when the odds seem overwhelming, survival is victory in itself. So the next time you sit down at a chessboard, take a moment to appreciate the king, not just as a piece, but as a teacher. Let it remind you to move with purpose, to lead with intention, and to protect the things you value most. Because in chess, as in life, the king is not just a piece, it's a reminder of what truly matters. The game begins and ends with the king, and so does life.